Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is live. Thanks a lot. And we've got a special guest today, and that's Beth Carroll. Beth, how are you?
I'm good, Jim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to have you here on our live show. And we've known each other. We've been friends for what, 12 years?
12 years, I think. Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been great. And I love you. I love your husband, John, and been to your houses. It's just fantastic. Really love being out on the water, hanging out with you guys. And we used to hang out at conventions all over throughout the whole year.
Mm-hmm. I
And
haven't done that
a
lately,
little bit, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
So how you been? What's new?
Well, been a very different year, obviously, for me as for everybody. I haven't flown in over a year now, which if you remember what my life was like before, I was at O'Hare twice a week, typically. I hit 1 million miles on United in December of 2019. So at least I got that milestone taken care of before all this happened. So I'm lifetime silver status on United, even if I never fly again. But it's been very interesting. As you said, it gave us a chance to buy a house on the river, which we would probably have never done without COVID. So that's where I am now. And otherwise things are pretty much the same, still doing the work that I did before. It's all good.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, it really gives all of us an opportunity to really take a perspective of what's really going on and how we live our lives. Because now we're living lives a little bit differently at our houses. And I can tell you, I've done 15 years of honey-do lists in our house. My wife's like, what's going on? Are you selling the house? I'm like, no, it's just if I'm sitting around the house all day long, every day, like things I get noticed. And so I've taken that on, and, people are like, well, listen, if I can live anywhere I want, well, why not have a vacation home? Why not?
Yeah.
And it's the way to go. And have you been vaccinated yet?
I got vaccinated yesterday. So John and I we had our first shots yesterday. So my arm is a little sore, but so far, no headache, knock on wood, or anything like that. So our second shot will be in April. April.
Great. That's great to hear. Yeah, I haven't yet. So we'll see what happens on that. But I have been on a plane, and I think I have just as many miles as you do, if not a little bit more. And I don't miss flying around like crazy. That's one thing I don't miss.
I don't miss it either.
So pretty interesting. Well, listen, a lot of our viewers are tuning in today because you are a master at compensation plans. I mean, there are people that are skilled. I thought I was skilled at compensation plans. A lot of business owners think they are because they know the industry, right? And I remember when we were friends first before I actually came to you to get assistance on helping us with ours. But I remember coming to you and saying, well, listen, this one company, ABC company, I want a plan just like theirs, because that's what everybody was trying to do, right? 12 years ago. And you're like, no, Jim, things aren't done like that. And you really put me in my place. And we carefully crafted plans that would work for each one of our departments in our company. So, you must get a lot of questions like that from business owners. Like you probably heard some really crazy questions, but let's start it out just understanding the landscape of where a business owner or a manager is dealing with compensation structures, and really what are they dealing with, and how do you help?
Well, I think a lot of it is they don't know what they don't know, right? So like you didn't know what you didn't know. You just assumed that everybody paid a commission with a draw, right? And that the only discussion was, well, what's the right commission rate? And my job is not to dictate how the right way for a particular company to do something. That's up to you guys to decide. My job is to let you understand that there's a lot of different ways to do this. There's a lot of different ways to go about compensation design, a lot of different choices. And what is right for one company is not necessarily going to be right for another company. I always say it's like buying somebody else's bespoke suit. It's like, it might fit, but you're probably going to look kind of silly wearing it. Yeah. So it's better off if you have something custom tailored for yourself. And that's what I help companies do, is figure out how to create a compensation plan that reflects their culture, their values, their way they want to motivate people, because companies are very, very different from that standpoint.
Absolutely. And in the happenings inside the business, each business is different and the happenings are too, as well as the profit margin percentages. We
Mhm.
as business owners, we want to compensate fairly to our employees and want to make it fair. But the way that we look at things, our purview is different than another business owner and such.
Mhm.
And that's where you're able to come in and really just help us and give us that confidence level. Because honestly, as business owners, we really don't have that confidence to really say this is the way it goes. And we're the business owner or entrepreneur is usually not also the CFO. In some
Mhm.
cases they are, and they have the competencies that are strong in one area but lacking in others. And most of us concentrate on where we're strong at and we stay there.
Mhm.
I've always stretched out to other areas where I'm weak at. And you really helped us in that whole area and really changed things around where it helped us really start growing. Cause I mean, back in 2010, I think we were about $4.5 million.
Mhm.
And today, we'll hit $100 million or just over that. So thank you very much. And, I just say it's a journey. It's not the destination. So
I think, Jim, an important point that you brought up is every business is different, but every business is also different at different times. So if you think about where you were when we first started working together, the plans that we designed then, you aren't still using, right? There's pieces of them that I can look at it and go, okay, I remember he's kept that thing that we did. But what I think you got from the process was more of the methodology than thinking that you're going to come up with a static plan that's going to last you for 12 years. I
right.
mean, over that time, how often would you say you've changed your plans?
Yeah, I lost count.
But
I've called you
probably,
so many times. I'm like, Beth, I need help.
but it should be. And people
Yeah.
think this is a failure. People think when you change your plans that that's a failure. I've actually had clients kind of call me sheepishly and be like, I'm sorry, I changed it 3 years later. And I'm like, no, that's what you should be doing, right? You
Right.
should change your plans, not dramatically, but you should change your plans every year, right? You should be looking at them and tweaking them and adjusting them because the world isn't stagnant. Your roles aren't stagnant. Your staff isn't stagnant. God knows in the last 3 years, things have not been stagnant, in the economy and the world. So you have to have a structure, a compensation structure and methodology that is very dynamic and flexible and adaptable as well. And so I always like to think of it that I'm more of a teacher than I am somebody who delivers a comp plan, right? I want to teach my clients how to do it for themselves.
Yeah. And you're so great at it. And you're so patient too. I'm
Sometimes.
for everybody out there, I'll just tell you, I'm the guy that called up. I think it was November 1st or November. I think it was after Thanksgiving,
It
maybe
was the
December
day
1st.
after Thanksgiving. It
Yeah.
was Friday after Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I got my budget together. I've got everything set. I've got the business plan, been working on it since August. And Beth, I need this, I need this plan. I'm ready now after being friends for years. And I really need your help now. Okay,
And you
cool.
can do
When
it
would
in
you like
four
to
weeks,
do
right?
this? Second quarter of next year? I'm like, no, like today, like now. I need this before the end of the year. And you're like, okay. And not knowing, right? I need it and I
Right.
need it
You didn't know.
now.
Right.
So first off, I'm sorry for doing that to you. Second, I just want to ask more questions because everybody's tuning in now and they really want to hear. And listen, if you have questions and you want to ask someone that has mastered compensation plans, now's the time to go ahead and put a little comment question into the chat, and we'll get to that as we're rolling through this. The one question that I have is, the biggest mistake that managers make is developing compensation plans. They really do. And I've heard this from people that we've hired and so forth. I would say, what is the biggest mistake that managers have made with compensation plans that you've seen? Not at the beginning or in the beginning, maybe in the middle. And how do they align with those comps as well?
So I would say probably the biggest mistake is they think about it in a vacuum. They think all they're doing is a compensation plan design, right? And they may start the discussion by talking about what should the commission rate be. They're starting at the end. And so you really have to start, even if what you're doing is just tweaking from one year to the next, start with what is your business strategy? What are your objectives? What's your goal? What's your vision? What's your company culture? What's your philosophy? Define your roles. What are your accountabilities and expectations for those roles? What do you want the people to do? And then figure out a compensation plan that rewards them for doing that. Oftentimes, my clients, if I ask them, well, what do you expect? What does good look like? Right? Is it 8 loads a day? Is it 10 loads a day? Is it 30,000 a month in gross margin? Is it 15% GP? What does good look like? And they go, oh, we've never really thought about that. It's like, well, you got to think about that, right? Because you want to make sure that people know when they're doing a barely acceptable, I call that threshold, when they're doing target, which is what good looks like, and when they're doing excellence, right? And your compensation plan should have at least those 3 levels in it so that you're constantly reinforcing where they are performing relative to your expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to exercise this. It's something that you can't just leave it stagnant, right? Like you were saying before, you have to have that strategy. And like Stephen R. Covey says, begin with an end in mind, right? So if you can put yourself in that desired state where you want to be for the company, and also where you want the salesperson or accounting person or CSR, wherever you want them to be, and be able to reach that as something that's obtainable that they can get to and stretch to. But you also want to have like expectations set that this is what I'm expecting you to do.
Right.
And then this is where I want you, this is the goal that I want you to reach after you hit that. Right. And I see a lot of people failing in those areas, especially as we're in acquisition mode, looking at other businesses and what they have going on. I'm noticing that the competency of commission plans, they set it and forget it. It's almost like, yeah, well, I hired a manager. The manager's doing their job, so I'm that area is good now. No, and they fail at it, right?
And by definition, straight commission plans have no goal, right? If you just pay somebody a straight, 5, 10%, 15%, whatever it is, they decide how much money they need to make. And so they're going to reverse engineer it, and they're going to say, okay, this is how much I want to make. So this is how much I have to produce in order to make that much money. That may or may not align with the leader's expectations for that person. It might not be good. It might be great. It might not be. You don't know. Nor do you know if you have 100 people doing that, does their achievement add up to what you want to achieve as a leader? And so, Jim, you talk about vision and leadership all the time. Compensation plans are a way that you can align vision, right? So you can align leadership vision with the employee's vision. Obviously, they want to make money, right? But they also want to know that they're doing a good job. And the compensation plan is a way that you can communicate that to them.
Absolutely. And along the way, I know as a business owner, we get set. And as you said, employees are smart rats. Business owners are smart rats. We're like, okay, well, this is what I can do with the plan. This is what I can't do with the plan. And we adjust. Along the way, what's one thing that you would suggest to, like, the market's changing and we're adding on a new mode of revenue, whatever thing that we're doing, and it's outside of the regular commission plan? Is there some way that we could structure a plan that has something as I don't know, let's use words like spiff or bogey or da 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 da.
Yeah, spiff is a good word.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So a spiff is something that is outside of the normal compensation plan, right? So you should have a plan document for every one of your roles that has a compensation and incentive compensation plan that explains how they get their regular monthly, quarterly, whatever payments. A spiff is something that sits outside of that. Okay. It's usually short term. It's often run in the form of like a contest kind of approach, and it's going after a very specific objective. So you could do something like, we want to increase our company margin percentage by 0.5% this quarter, right? And if we do this, everybody in the company is going to get, an extra $500, something like that. That's kind of a spiff. You're not going to necessarily do it every quarter. You're going to change it up. You want to make sure that you don't create spiff addiction, though. So sometimes if a company has a broken incentive plan, if their core foundational compensation plan is broken, managers will learn to pay people through spiffs. So they'll actually run all these spiffs all the time to make up for what's not working in the regular compensation plan. That's not a good thing to do. It's better to just fix your compensation plan and make sure that it's achieving what you want it to achieve, rather than creating this extra thing. A classic example of that would be if people aren't covering their draw, so they're not actually getting any money, and then you're running these contests that's enabling them to get money. We need to look at why they're not covering their draw, and do you even want to have a draw in the first place? And isn't there something better you could do with your core compensation plan than artificially pay for them in these other things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that from time to time. It's amazing how often we lose sight of the core competencies and the core purpose of what's actually going on.
Mhm.
The one thing that I would say too is, when dealing with incentive plans, we're always trying to look at an outcome, right? The salespeople want an outcome, the company needs an outcome, and somehow we have to conjoin those together and
Mhm.
really have a desired outcome together, a created future, if you will. And the one thing that I found is, if we're trying to stop doing something or if we want to start doing something, we have to identify who we need to be, right? Who do we need to be in that? Who does the company have to be from a brand essence? And who
Mhm.
does the salesperson need to be? And if we can identify that, that usually bridges the gap between, what you want to start doing or stop doing, and then what the outcome is. And
Mhm.
that gap is who we need to be. And this is where you've been really beneficial for Becker Logistics to come in and really help us really see the unseen,
Mhm.
because we weren't able to see certain things. You really transformed who Becker Logistics was back when we were a $4.5 million company. And from there to here, you've really helped us out. So I want to really just acknowledge you, and on behalf of all of our employees, really thank you for everything that you've helped us with. So
You're welcome, Jen. Those kinds of stories are great. I love that, because I spend my life doing compensation plan designs. And you will get emails from me at 3 a.m. or on the weekends or whatever so it is truly my life, and it is nice to know when I've been positive influence.
absolutely. Well, it brings us to another question I have for you is, what are the two common ways to pay salespeople? Give us an idea looking at
Yep.
that, because there's so many different ways.
Well, everybody's heard of commissions, right? Most people don't really use the word properly. So in general language, people will use the word commission to mean any variable comp that's paid to a salesperson typically. It's actually a bit of a term of art that is used in compensation design circles, where commission is technically a calculation methodology that pays somebody a percentage of revenue or a percentage of gross margin. So it actually refers to the math where you're paying somebody a percentage. That is a true commission. And it's important to actually understand that, because there are some states like California that create different legal rules around commission plans versus goal-based incentive plans. So if you are paying somebody using a true commission methodology in California, then there's documentation requirements that go along with it. So I always say it's better generically to call it an incentive. If you're not sure, just call it an incentive, right? Because you don't want to trip over something that's not actually a requirement for you if you're not really paying a commission. So call it an incentive. And then one form of that is paying a percentage. So that's paying a literal commission rate. You're getting a 10% of gross margin. The other extreme is doing a goal-based incentive plan. Okay. So under a commission methodology, you have somebody's production and you have their pay, and they are linked together with a number, 5%, 10%, 15%, right? So you've created a mathematical formula. That number now becomes a fixed thing. Any of you who have tried to reduce a commission rate to somebody will testify how difficult that is to do. Okay. When you do a goal-based incentive plan, you have production and you have pay. And those two things are now no longer connected by a strict mathematical formula. Instead, what you're saying is, we expect a certain amount of production. And when we get that production, we will provide a certain amount of pay. But there's no number that links them together. There's no 5%, there's no 10%. you can do a scale that says 80% of goal pays 50% of your target incentive, 100 pays 100, maybe 150% pays 200%, right? So you are creating a formulaic relationship between those two numbers, but you retain control over what's the goal and what's the pay. So a commission is definitely in that fix it and forget it kind of land, right? But with rapid growth, and this is going to happen in the brokerage world, I'm just, I'm waiting for the ones to figure it out and survive and the ones to implode. But with automation, right? All of those companies that have done the fix it and forget it commission plans, as robotics come on, as automation comes on, their production is going to skyrocket. And so is the pay, unless they change that relationship, right? Unless they reduce that commission rate. Companies that have already moved to a goal-based incentive plan can have the production increase, whatever it is, it needs to be, and they control how much the pay increases along with that production. It's not pulled up automatically because of a 10% rate that you set 15 years ago.
Right. I mean, and you are so good at looking at those spreadsheets and going through that. And I remember I looked at you, I'm like, is she doing quantum physics over here? What is she doing? And I'm like, I got to go get another cup of coffee. And then finally understanding it. I mean, this is, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, going through this, and you really helped us, our team really understand it as we went through that, and along the way helped us adjust it as well. So just fantastic work. And, you have a history of doing this in the past before you actually started your own company. So
yep, I was with a big HR consulting firm for 10 years. That's how I learned to do what I do. And then I started my own company and just happened to luck into working with transportation companies, which was just a wonderful serendipitous blessing for me to land in this industry.
And you're part of the family. I mean, I couldn't see this landscape without you. So freaking awesome. We got some questions that are coming in. How should an employee bring up wanting to make changes to their compensation plan?
Excellent question, because management is probably going to hear that and think they're just asking for money. But if an employee brings it and says, I think there's something, this compensation plan is motivating me to do something that is at odds with the company values, that would be a great conversation starter. And I have had people tell me that, like, when I do interviews at the beginning of a project, I've had them tell me how they cheat the plan, that they have their customers put more money in a load at the end of the month because it takes them over a commission tier. And if it's a retroactive commission rate, they get a higher commission rate on all of the dollars for the month. And then they basically pay the customer back in the next month. I've heard stories of people buying accounts from each other, right? So a great way, if an employee wants to change the compensation plan, phrase it in terms of why it is in the company's interest to do so, and then you will get management's attention. And I'm a big believer in paying really well. If somebody's doing a fantastic job, the plan should be uncapped for revenue generating roles. So in the brokerage world, your customer sales, your carrier sales, no limit to how much money people can make. I'm all for paying them a ton of money. It just has to be done in a way that it is sensible for both the employee and the company.
Yeah, because I've seen, especially on some of the targets that we've been looking at in our acquisition plan again, and in 2017 when we were looking at companies, some plans could belly flop the company really quickly into bankruptcy because they didn't think about the end goal. I mean, it's all about achieving everyone. It's not just one person, one rock star that's really producing that. There's a whole team, everything from, to janitors, to the lights being on, to the accounting department, to the tracking and tracing team, to that really make this thing possible. And then what we do try to do is we try to find something that's fair to really make that happen. And that's where someone like you and your team that comes in really helps transform a company into who they are going to become with a purpose and a plan, both for the employee and for the employer.
That's a good point, Jim. I've dealt with a couple companies that had some of those rock stars, and they were afraid to change their compensation plans because those maybe 2 or 3 people held 80% of the company's business. That is a huge liability. Like, so somebody for like you who's looking to acquire, we're probably going to steer away from those companies because it's difficult to ensure that those employees are going to stay with the company once it's been acquired.
Right.
So it actually devalues the company to have those plans.
Just took that out of my mouth.
Yep.
Yeah, total, the devaluation, usually 20% to 40% less than what the company's actually worth.
Yep.
And, looking at that, it's just like customer concentration. It's the same thing. And salesperson's concentration, customer concentration. If you're over, 12%, I start getting worried with your number one customer that high. The same thing with your top salesperson, right? Or your top CSR, carrier sales rep. So in those situations, those are things that you and your team really bring forward as well as any business owner should be really looking at that. Listen, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you're busy in handling clients and everything. I know you have something coming up with the Transportation Intermediaries Association, the TIA.
In April,
which we're both part of. When's that coming up? If they want to learn more there,
April 20th and 22nd, I think, are the first 2 days, and then I've got it the next week as well. So it's Tuesdays, and it's a Tuesday and a Thursday, 2 weeks in a row. And it's basically what is normally my TIA pre-conference seminar that I do for 6 hours the day before the conference starts. Of course, we're virtual again this year, so they've split it up, and we're doing it over 2 weeks on Tuesday and Thursday. There's going to be a lot more dynamic parts to it where people are actually going to be talking about their own structures. I'm going to have everybody create their own org chart. You're going to learn how to do org charts in PowerPoint. And then I'm going to also have you work on doing a little bit of comp design within the bounds of Department of Justice kind of stuff, but sharing some best practices amongst the group as well.
Awesome. We'll be there. Great TIA supporter. And just contributed to the PAC, and they have their conference coming up in May. So if you want to learn more information about that, learn more information. And speaking about information, how could people get a hold of you, Beth?
Yep. So Beth.Carroll, 2 R's, 2 L's in Carroll, at prosperiogroup.com. So Prosperio is like prosperity. Anybody who's ever had to come up with a business name knows what a pain in the butt that is. So after many, many different choices, I landed on Prosperio, and it was available. The URL was available. So prosperiogroup.com, Beth.Carroll at prosperiogroup.com. And if anybody wants to reach out from this, they just mentioned that they saw me on the Jim Becker Live thing, and I would be happy to do 30 minutes of free consultation.
Oh, you can't go wrong with that. Beth, you are a blessing. I love you. Your company's fantastic. Really appreciate everything that you do for this whole community in the transportation world. Everything you're doing is fantastic. Thank you very much for the integrity, the authenticity, and who you are and being cause in everybody. Really, honestly.
You're welcome, Jim.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And listen, have a great day. And I will be talking to you later. Okay. And everybody else out there, thank you for joining. See you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.